As the sun dipped below the horizon, long shadows stretched across the yard while I observed Mike and Steve working on my old Ford. The air was filled with the strong smell of oil and gasoline, a sharp contrast to the emptiness that now pervaded our home. My husband, Tom, once the center of attention at every gathering, had become a mere shadow of his former self, lost to alcohol. Standing there, a mix of gratitude and frustration swirling within me, I couldn't help but ponder the price of their kindness. I remained in the kitchen, watching Mike and Steve as they worked on my old Ford. The setting sun cast long shadows across the yard, and the air was heavy with the scent of oil and gasoline. It was a scene that should have been comforting, a reminder of better days when Tom would have been out there with them, laughing and joking. But now the laughter was gone, replaced by the clanging of tools and the occasional grunt of effort. My name is Bridget, and at 58, life had thrown me a curveball I never saw coming. My husband, Tom, once the life of every party, had become a shadow of his former self. The man who used to light up the room with his presence was now more often found in the dim light of our living room, a bottle in hand, his eyes lost to the world. Our home, once a sanctuary of joy, now felt like a mausoleum of memories, each room echoing with the silence of neglect. Mike and Steve, Tom's best friends, had become my unexpected guardians. Mike, with his rough hands and a mechanic's instinct, had a rugged charm that was hard to ignore. Steve, on the other hand, always had an easy smile, his presence a balm to the tension that had become our daily life. They were here not just for the camaraderie they once shared with Tom, but now their visits were tinged with concern for me. The car, an old Ford that Tom and I had bought in our better days, had decided today was the day it would give up the ghost. With Tom in no state to help, I was left staring at the lifeless machine, feeling as stranded as it looked. That's when Mike and Steve stepped in. They arrived with their tools, ready to breathe life back into what Tom couldn't. As I watched them, a mix of gratitude and frustration swirled within me. Gratitude for their help, their kindness, but frustration at the situation, at Tom's descent, at the life we once had slipping through our fingers like sand. The sun dipped lower, and the shadows grew longer. Mike wiped his brow with the back of his hand, leaving a smear of grease across his forehead. "Almost got it, Bridget," he called out, his voice carrying a note of triumph. Steve, ever the optimist, gave me a thumbs up from under the car. I couldn't help but feel a pang of something else as I watched them. There was an intimacy in their work, a closeness that was once Tom's domain. It wasn't just about fixing the car. It was about fixing something in me, in us, that had been broken for far too long. As they worked, I found myself lost in thought, wondering about the future, about what would happen when the car was fixed and the bill came due. Not just the financial bill, but the emotional one. How would we pay for the kindness they showed, for the support they offered? And more importantly, could I watch as Mike and Steve, their shirts off due to the relentless heat, worked tirelessly under the hood of my old Ford? The afternoon sun beat down, turning the garage into an oven, but their spirits remained high. Their laughter and banter filled the space, a stark contrast to the somber atmosphere inside our home. I brought them cold beers, trying to express my thanks in small ways. As they finished, I realized with a sinking heart that I had no money to pay them. The embarrassment of my situation weighed heavily on me, not just from the financial strain, but from the realization of how far we had fallen. Mike, wiping his hands on a rag, looked at me with a kind smile. "Don't worry about it, Bridget. We're here for you." Steve nodded in agreement, his eyes reflecting a warmth that made me feel less alone. But what would be the cost of their kindness? The thought lingered as I stood there watching them pack up their tools. The car repair had taken most of the afternoon, and now, as the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the yard, I felt a mix of relief and anxiety. Their help was invaluable, but the unspoken debt felt like a shadow over our friendship. Mike's rugged charm, his rough hands that knew every inch of an engine, had always been a comfort. Steve, with his easy smile, had a way of lightening the mood, even in the darkest of times. They were more than just Tom's friends now. They were my lifeline in this sea of despair. As they prepared to leave, I couldn't help but wonder about the future. The car was fixed, but what about us? What about Tom, who was now a mere ghost of the man I married? His descent into the bottle had left me feeling stranded, much like the car had been before Mike and Steve's intervention. Their kindness today was a reminder of what we once had, a time when life was filled with laughter and shared moments. Now those memories seem to echo through our home, a haunting reminder of better days. I thanked them again, my voice barely above a whisper, overwhelmed by their generosity. Mike gave me a reassuring pat on the shoulder, his touch lingering just a moment longer than necessary, sending an unexpected shiver down my spine. Steve's gaze held mine for a second too long, a silent promise of support. As they drove away, I stood in the doorway, watching the taillights disappear down the road. The air was still thick with the scent of oil and gasoline, a tangible reminder of their presence, the intimacy of their work, the closeness they shared. It was a stark contrast to the isolation I felt with Tom. The question remained, hanging in the air like the dust motes in the fading light. What would be the cost of their kindness? Would it be just the repair of a car, or something more? Something that could potentially mend the broken pieces of our lives? Or would it be a debt I could never repay? A reminder of what we that evening, after Tom had passed out from another bout of drinking, the house was eerily quiet, except for the soft hum of the refrigerator. I invited Mike and Steve in for a drink, a gesture of hospitality, but also a silent plea for company. As we sat in the dimly lit living room, the conversation turned personal. They spoke of Tom's decline, their frustration evident in their heavy sighs and the way their eyes avoided mine. I felt the weight of their words, the unspoken questions about what had become of us. Then, in a moment of vulnerability, I confessed my financial woes, the mounting bills, the dwindling savings. I expressed my gratitude for their help, not just with the car, but for being there when Tom couldn't. Mike, ever the straightforward one, leaned forward, his voice low but firm. "Bridget, you know we're here for you. No questions asked, but there's something you could do to thank us, something that could help all of us." His proposal was shocking, yet, in my desperation and loneliness, it felt like an escape. "Steve, initially hesitant, looked between Mike and me, his gaze lingering a bit too long on mine. The air was thick with tension, the kind that precedes a storm. Mike's suggestion hung in the air, unspoken but palpable. It was a way out, a way to repay their kindness. But at what cost? The room seemed to close in around us, the dim light casting shadows that danced with our thoughts. I felt a mix of fear and excitement, the kind that comes from stepping into the unknown. Mike's hand found mine, his touch warm and reassuring, yet it sent a shiver of something else through me. Steve, perhaps sensing my hesitation, spoke up, his voice softer. "Bridget, we care about you. We want to help, but we also need something in return. It's not just about the car or the money. It's about us, about feeling needed, about connection." His words were like a balm, soothing yet stirring something deep within me. The silence that followed was heavy, filled with the unspoken agreement of what might happen next. I could feel the pull of their presence, the promise of an escape from the loneliness that had become my constant companion. As the night deepened, the decision loomed before me, stark and clear. Would I cross this line, step into this new territory with them, or would I retreat back into the solitude of my life with Tom? The choice was mine, but the implications would echo through our lives, changing everything. In that moment, I realized the cost of their kindness wasn't just about fixing a car or settling a debt. It was about the bonds we forge in times of need, the sacrifices we make, and the paths we choose when the road ahead is uncertain. The night stretched on, and with each passing second, the decision grew more inevitable, like the slow descent into a dream from which there's no easy awakening. The room was thick with tension as I led Mike and Steve upstairs, past Tom's snoring form. The house felt like a stage, each step echoing with the weight of what was about to unfold. In the bedroom, the air was heavy with anticipation. I felt a mix of guilt, excitement, and a strange sense of empowerment. As we crossed the threshold, I turned to them, my voice barely above a whisper. "This is just between us, right?" They nodded, their expressions a mix of desire and concern. The room seemed to shrink, the walls closing in as if to witness the secret we were about to share. I could hear my heart pounding in my ears, each beat a drumroll to the inevitable. Mike's eyes were intense, his gaze holding mine with a promise of something more, something forbidden yet irresistible. Steve's hand brushed against mine, a gentle, reassuring touch that sent a shiver through me, not of cold, but of anticipation. I took a deep breath. The scent of the room, a mix of old wood and the faint musk of cologne filling my senses. "I need this," I whispered more to myself than to them, but they heard. They understood. Mike stepped closer, his presence overwhelming. "We're here for you, Bridget," he said, his voice a low rumble that vibrated through the silence. His hand found my waist, pulling me gently towards him. The contact was electric, a spark that ignited something deep within me, a part I thought had long been extinguished by Tom's neglect. Steve watched, his eyes reflecting a storm of emotions. "We care about you," he added, his voice softer, almost lost in the thick air. His words were a balm, soothing yet stirring something deep within me. The decision was made not with words, but with the silent agreement of our bodies moving closer together. The room, once a place of solitude and sorrow, now pulsed with a different energy. The shadows danced with our movements, the dim light casting a veil over what was about to happen. I felt Mike's lips on mine, a kiss that was both a question and an answer. It was a kiss that spoke of years of suppressed desire, of the loneliness that had been my constant companion. His touch was firm yet tender, a contrast to the roughness of his hands, hands that had fixed my car, hands that now sought to fix something in me. Steve's touch was different, his fingers tracing lines along my arms, sending waves of goosebumps across my skin. His kisses were gentle, exploring as if he was trying to memorize every curve of my face. The room spun around us, the reality of our situation blurring into a haze of need and escape. The weight of Tom's snoring from downstairs was a distant echo, a reminder of the life I was momentarily stepping away from. As we moved together, the layers of our clothes began to fall away, each piece a symbol of the barriers we were breaking. The air was charged, every breath a shared secret, every touch a promise of something more than just physical release. I felt a surge of empowerment, a reclaiming of my own body, my own desires. After years of feeling invisible here in this room, with these men who had become my lifeline, I was not just Tom's wife, not just a caretaker of a man lost to his own demons. Here I was, Bridget, alive, desired, and in control. The night stretched on, the decision we made echoing through our actions, changing the fabric of our relationships. It was not just about the physicality, it was about connection, about feeling needed, about the bonds we forge in times of need. As we lay there, the aftermath of our choices settling around us, I realized the cost of their kindness was not just about fixing a car or settling a debt. It was about the sacrifices we make, the paths we choose when the road ahead is uncertain. The night had changed us, altered the course of our lives in ways we couldn't yet fully comprehend. But in that moment, with the warmth of their bodies next to mine, I felt a peace I hadn't known in years, a peace that came from stepping into the unknown, from choosing to live rather than merely exist. The night unfolded in a blur of emotions and sensations. It was an act of rebellion against my life's constraints, a reclaiming of control, albeit in a morally ambiguous way. The physical connection was intense, but it was the emotional release that was most profound. For those hours, I wasn't just Tom's neglected wife. I was desired, appreciated, and in control. Mike's touch was like a spark in the darkness, igniting a fire within me that I thought had long been extinguished. His hands, rough from years of working on engines, now explored my skin with a tenderness that contrasted sharply with their usual roughness. Steve's approach was different, his touch gentle, almost reverent, as if he was afraid I might break. His kisses were soft, exploring, mapping out the contours of my face with a care that made my heart ache. The room seemed to pulse with our shared breaths, the air thick with the scent of our desires. It was a dance of shadows and light, where every movement was both a promise and a confession. We moved together, not just in physicality, but in a shared understanding of our needs, our loneliness, our yearning for connection. As the night wore on, the layers of our clothes fell away, symbolizing the barriers we were breaking down. Each piece discarded was like shedding the weight of my past, the years of feeling invisible, unappreciated. Here in this room, with these men who had become my unexpected saviors, I was not just Bridget, the caretaker of a man lost to his own demons. Here I was alive, vibrant, and in command of my own narrative. The intimacy was not just about the physical closeness. It was about feeling seen, about the warmth of being needed, about forging bonds in the crucible of our mutual desperation. The act itself was a whirlwind, a storm of sensations that left me breathless, a storm that was both liberating and terrifying in its intensity. Morning came too soon, with the harsh light of day revealing the reality of what had transpired. Mike and Steve left quietly, leaving me with a mix of relief and dread. The silence of the house was deafening now, the absence of their presence palpable. I stood at the window, watching their car disappear down the road, the dust settling behind them like the aftermath of our night together. The question of how this secret would change the dynamics of our lives hung heavy in the air. Would it be a one-time escape, a moment of madness that we would all agree to forget? Or would it be the beginning of something new, something that could either mend or further fracture the fragile threads of our relationships? I felt a pang of guilt as I looked at Tom, still asleep, unaware of the storm that had passed through his home. But beneath the guilt was a burgeoning sense of empowerment. I had made a choice to reclaim something for myself, to step out of the shadows of neglect and into a space where I was the protagonist of my own story. The cost of their kindness was now clear. It wasn't just about fixing a car or settling a debt. It was about the bonds we forge, the sacrifices we make, and the paths we choose when the road ahead is uncertain. The night had changed us, altered the course of our lives in ways we couldn't yet fully comprehend. But in that moment, with the echoes of our shared intimacy still lingering, I felt a peace I hadn't known in years, a peace that came from stepping into the unknown, from choosing to live rather than merely exist. Years have passed since that night, a night that changed the fabric of our lives in ways none of us could have predicted. Tom's condition worsened over time, his health deteriorating until he passed away. It was a somber time filled with reflections on what had been and what could have been. Now, at 75, I look back on that night with a complex mix of regret and understanding. Mike and Steve, now older and grayer, still visit occasionally. They come with their tools, not just to fix my car, but to share a piece of our past, to keep the memory of Tom alive in the only way they know how. Their visits are no longer about the physical closeness we once shared. Instead, they've evolved into something unspoken but deeply understood. In the quiet of my home, we sit with our drinks, the warmth of the fire casting long shadows across the room. The laughter that once filled these walls has been replaced by a more subdued camaraderie. We talk about the old days, about Tom, about the life we all once knew. There's a comfort in this, in knowing that someone else remembers those times. Someone else understands the weight of the past. Our relationship has transcended the physical. It's about companionship now, about the shared history that binds us. When Mike fixes something around the house, or Steve brings over a new book he thinks I might like, there's an unspoken acknowledgement of our past, a silent agreement that what happened was a moment out of time, a chapter closed but not forgotten. The significance of this ongoing relationship in the twilight of our lives is profound. It's a testament to the resilience of human connection, to the idea that relationships can evolve, heal, and grow beyond their initial form. We've moved from a place of need and desperation to one of mutual respect and care. There's a lesson in this, I think, as I watch Mike's now weathered hands adjust the carburetor on my car, or see Steve's eyes light up when he shares a story from his travels. It's about forgiveness, not just for each other, but for ourselves. We've all made choices. Some we regret, others we cherish, but all have shaped us. In these moments, I realized the true cost of their kindness wasn't just about fixing a car or settling a debt. It was about understanding about the bonds we forge in times of need and the paths we choose when the road ahead is uncertain. It's about the sacrifices we make, not just for ourselves, but for the people we care about, even if those sacrifices are born from complex, sometimes morally ambiguous places. As we sit in silence, the fire crackling, I feel a peace I hadn't known in years. It's not the peace of forgetting, but of acceptance, of living with the choices we've made. The night that changed everything now feels like a distant memory. Yet its echoes are here in the quiet companionship, in the shared drink, in the knowing. Looks we exchange. This relationship signifies more than just the passage of time. It's a reminder of our shared humanity, of the capacity to love, to forgive, and to find solace in the company of those who have seen us at our most vulnerable. It's about the comfort of knowing someone else remembers, someone else cares, and in that, there's a profound sense of not being alone in the world. Even as we age, even as we face the end,